Om Shri Sai Ram. My most loving salutations at the lotus feet of my beloved Lord, respected elders, sisters, and brothers of the Sai family. Sai Ram to all of you. As the countdown to the 96th birthday nears, we have speeches from the youth of another region. We also have the Prashnottara Vahini live by about 10:30 with our dear Lord answering our questions that have already been sent to him. And the theme is the pandemic lesson within and without. I remember a story that I read that in the mid-1900s in Bangkok, Thailand, there was a huge clay Buddha, 2.5 tons in weight, in a monastery, in a Buddhist monastery. And the Thai government decided to build a road that cut across the monastery. And so it decided to relocate the clay Buddha. They got hold of a crane, a huge truck, and lifted the clay Buddha. And as the clay Buddha was moved, they had also put a tarpaulin on the top so that it doesn't get damaged. It was moved to the new location. It was already evening. And the head monk went with his torch inside the tarpaulin to see if there was any damage to the clay. And there was. And underneath the clay, there was something that was shining, glittering, gleaming. And he went and brought his other monks, and they used a chisel and a hammer to chip off. And what they realized was that it was not a clay Buddha. It was a Buddha made of solid gold. But when the plunderers had come to Thailand, in order to protect it, it was covered with clay. This has been the lesson of the pandemic. That you are not Mrunmaya, made of clay, but Chinmaya, made of gold. While the rest of the world actually felt lonely, I think only Sai devotees experienced solitude. With the Master Your Mind and the Kathopanishad discourses, we were all led to Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam. Listening, contemplation, and practice of the nectarine divine words. The message of Sadguru was loud and clear. And this has been printed in all the notebooks that you have. If you look at the last page of the notebook, the message is, the time has come to turn inward, to connect back to that voice within. Let every thought, word, and deed be guided by the source. Undertake only those actions that are approved by the supreme authority of your consciousness, and not the desiring mind and the demanding senses. Be in the world, but do not let the world be in you. That is true freedom, which is your birthright. I think the Mass during the pandemic indicated that we speak less. We were all forced to turn into the source. The monkey mind was made to turn within. The message was, Andar ja re bandar, go inside, O mind. That was the message to our ever-chattering mind. And we have the youth of Region 4 who will be sharing their lessons from the pandemic within and without. The first speaker of the day is Sister Sai Jyoti. Sai Jyoti graduated from the University of Argentina as an English-Spanish translator. She has been a kindergarten teacher for 6 years, and since January this year, Sai Jyoti has been resident here in Muddenahalli, working as part of the Global Outreach Office as a translator for the Institute of Human Values program. And she will be speaking to us about her experience during the pandemic, within and without. Over to Sister Sai Jyoti.
Offering my humble pranams at the divine lotus feet of Bhagavan Sri Sathya Sai Baba. Loving Sai Ram, dear sisters and brothers. As we all experience, the pandemic of COVID-19 affected the whole world at many different levels. Whether it is in our physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual body, the virus marked the life of everyone without distinction. This gave us strong feelings of anxiety, uncertainty, and distress, which changed the life of everyone without distinction and put us to introspect about life. One of the lessons that I learned during this pandemic time is how temporary the happiness from material world is, because we had to go through a long period of lockdown in which we realized that all the material things and our busy daily lives were just taking us away from our true essence. All these activities were distracting our minds, and we forgot about who we really are. This made us jump around from sorrow to joy, happiness and sadness, and pain and pleasure. And in this lockdown, we could see that spirituality is the only way to real happiness and permanent happiness. Because if we have a solid spiritual basis, we will be able to deal with all the problems in the world. And what does it mean to live a spiritual life? In my opinion, it is to have the awareness that we are more than just our body, mind, and emotions. With spirituality, we learn acceptance and equanimity, because we know that all the situations are just temporary and are just for our own development and growth. In my personal experience, I have to say that I was dealing with very challenging situations because I was far away from my country, family, and friends. And this gave me strong emotions, and I started to feel very limited by my thoughts because I saw everything as problems, obstacles, difficulties. And this made me enter in a very comfortable zone of victimhood, because I started to blame all the external situation for my own problems. And one day, fortunately, Sri Madhusudan Sai showed us a phrase which is, "It is funny because we ask God to change our situation without knowing that God put us in this situation to change us." And I have to say that this is very true, because I remember that I found myself praying and complaining, "Oh, Swami, please, this situation is just very difficult for me. I cannot do this. If you change this, I will be very happy and everything will be fine." Because in my mind, I thought that I knew what was going to be the best for me. But what I didn't know is that I had to learn to accept everything with equanimity, because these situations were showing me what I had to transform in myself to be closer to my true divinity and my true self. And this Because when we find out what needs to be transformed, our situation outside may change or not. But in that moment, it will not matter because we are in a peace with ourselves, and in this way, we are able to deal with everything in life and with equanimity in the best possible way. I would like, if I have to make a summary about the lessons of this pandemic, I would say that it's the acronym of SAI, which stands for See Always Inside, because we could use this health crisis as an opportunity to leave aside the mind and the temporary pleasures, which are all the time changing, and go inside to feel and experience our Atma, our true divinity, which is eternal and never changing. I would like to conclude by offering my gratitude to Sri Madhusudan Sai, all these lessons for our practical life, to how to deal with our problems in life and how to go through this pandemic situation. And now it is our responsibility to take them into the next level and put them into practice. May all beings be at peace. May all be happy. May all be healthy. May all see what is auspicious. May no one suffer. Jai Sai Ram.
Thank you very much, Sister Sai Jyoti. See always inside. So beautiful. Our situations outside may change or not, but when we are in peace within, everything will change. That were her words and her experience. As one of the poets have said, if you want to make the world a better place and make a change, you got to start with the man in the mirror. And I think that's what we got an opportunity to do during the pandemic, our divinity inside, to look within. Thank you, sister. And now we have Jose Maria Taborda, who hails from Argentina, who will be speaking to us from Argentina. He graduated from the university as an accountant, and he works as a freelance accountant as well as in the Scholarship Institute of the Government of Entre Rios. He's currently studying for his post-graduation in auditing and accounting. Over to Jose Maria Taborda from Argentina.
Sri Sai Ram. The recent COVID pandemic taught us all many lessons, both individually and collectively. COVID suddenly appeared in the life of humanity, forcing us to get off that high-speed train in which the vast majority are immersed, also known as routine or everyday life, and leaving us to a stop that sometimes we overlook, our own life. It was a unique event in human history where, for the first time, the entire world stopped almost completely at the same time. One of the things that I have been able to see clearer is that just as all human beings are equal in the eyes of our beloved Lord, we are also being identical in the face of the virus. Since it has affected us all in the same way, without distinction of race, color, social status, financial and economic capacity, or religion. We have all been equally vulnerable to it. The pandemic taught me that you should never stop expressing what you feel to someone you love, because you may never see that person again. During COVID, we were unable to express feelings, to give a hug, to give a kiss, to have close contact with other people, because of the distance that we had to be maintained to avoid the spread of the virus. That made all the relationships become more impersonal and less effective, due to the lack of demonstration of feelings which all we have experienced. Thanks to our Lord, I did not have to live in person a close loss caused by COVID, but I could see in many friends and acquaintances how their experiences losses of family and friends, of whom they could not say goodbye or tell them everything they felt for them. I also learned a lot about the value of freedom. For most of us, freedom is so natural that until you lose it or it is restricted, you don't realize its importance. As in many countries in the world, here in Argentina, the confinement lasted for quite some time, which forced us to remain in our homes and only being able to go outside to perform some essential or necessary tasks. That was when I realized how important freedom is. The feeling of enjoying the walk outside, to be outdoors, in the nature, visiting friends, families, hanging out with someone, or having our time at your own whim and desire. Something very notorious that the pandemic brought with was the fear that it generated in many people. That fear, triggered mainly by uncertainty, caused the shadows that all of us carries with comes to the light. This situation, at the same time, prompted many, believers or not believers, to deploy their faith and trust in the existence of something greater, something supreme, to trust that everything happens for one reason, and in that way be able to overcome the fear that paralyzed them. COVID and its confinement led many of us to a moment of introspection. The great stop that was established in our routines, in our lives, led us to find ourselves, to rediscover and cultivate our inner divinity. For many, this time served to take care of us, of things that one left for later. It led us to know us better, to discover ourselves, to reorder priorities in life, to see that we will continue choosing for our future or what we will get rid of. In other words, it led us to take over of the most important things that every human being has: our own temple, our body, our inner divinity, our life. I could also see that many other people who were forced to introspection felt disoriented, desperate, worried, anxious, because they didn't know what to do with that time that they only had for them or for their families, because maybe they weren't able to use that time to take care of themselves. Something very important that the pandemic reminded me, and I think reminded us all, is something that sometimes overlooks or unnoticed in the daily routine. That thing is the importance of taking care of our great home, our planet, our environment. In the toughest moments of the pandemic, in the rigorous confinement in the world, in that great stop that all humanity suffered, was there when our beloved planet was able to rest a little from us. It was amazing to see how this stop caused a large drop in air pollution, making the water more crystal clear, which was reflected in an improvement in air and water quality in the largest urbanizations around the world. We could also see how the wild fauna returned to the places that once belonged to them, but that were taken by the men, either due to the expansion of the tourism in natural areas or due to the industrial activity. In conclusion, despite the scenes and bleak situations that the world experienced because of COVID, I rescued the positive that it brought to a large part of humanity. The fact of start worrying about ourselves, going inside to heal, to take care of us, to love us, to cultivate our divinity. It's my wish that all the learning that we accomplish in the pandemic make us more supportive, more loving about our neighbors, more human. Saira.
And that was Brother Jose Maria Taborda from Argentina. Thank you, Jose. And as he said, the fear that generated the uncertainty moved us to the faith in a greater, supreme, even for non-devotees, non-believers. And it led us to introspection to see the inner divinity. As Swami says, it helped us move from fear to faith. Brother also spoke about all of us reprioritizing our own life and taking care of our own inner temple. Just like Swami says, Deho Devalaya Prokto, Jivo Devas Sanathana. And finally, his all-encompassing talk also talked about how our beloved planet got rest and healed from all the pollution. Thank you once more, Brother Jose Maria Taborda. And now we have Sujaya Bhatt. Sujaya Bhatt is an alumna of Sri Sathya Sai Primary School at Puttaparthi. She lives in Toronto, Canada, and is currently working towards a law degree. So Sister Sujaya will share about her lessons that she has learned during the pandemic, within and without. Over to Sister Sujaya Bhatt.
Om Shri Sai Ram. I offer my most humble pranams at the divine lotus feet of Swami. Respected brothers and sisters and elders, and all those watching from across the globe, a very warm Sai Ram to all of you. I want to thank Swami for allowing me to be in India despite the pandemic and ensuring that I never fell sick. The topic we have been given is about the pandemic lessons from within and without. I would like to share with everybody my experiences during the pandemic and how I feel it has changed me internally and externally. Being a resident of Toronto, Canada, we broke the record for the city with the longest lockdown, which lasted 13 months. Being an outside person, I would always spend at least one day of the weekend outside from sunrise to sunset with my friends. So I was leading a quite happening life. Due to the pandemic, Toronto imposed many restrictions which forced me to go from leading a very quick life to a very indoor life and a very quiet life. And the number of distractions I had reduced very quickly. Luckily for me, at that point, Swami introduced the Master the Mind series. It was his grace that I found this Master the Mind series very applicable and capable of doing. In the beginning, following his steps to meditate was not very easy. It was hard to wake up at 3:30 or 4 in the morning and meditate. However, I was noticing that I was becoming more sensitive deep down to people's suffering. It was no longer easy to look at somebody in pain and just turn the other way and say, it's your karma, so deal with it. The meditation process also helped me overcome many prejudices I had concerning seva. For example, I would always look at how rich or poor somebody was and see whether they were deserving enough to be benefited from seva. For a short while, Swami gave me the opportunity to participate in the Sikh Seva Society of Toronto by distributing food packets during the pandemic. During this seva, I came across many people who were more financially well off than me, and I couldn't help but question why I was helping them when I could actually give this food packet to somebody who was actually in need on the street. This put me in a situation where I had to look beyond the multi-million-dollar homes, the luxury cars, and the materialism and impermanence that surrounds an individual. Swami made me realize that Brahman in me is the same Brahman in a homeless person, which is the same Brahman in a multimillionaire. He also taught me not to get carried away by all the external distractions and all the impermanence, because when everything else disappears, it's only the Brahman that remains. The turning point came for me around Swami's 95th birthday. Feed the World was going very smoothly for me in the sense that I was being a first-hand witness to Swami's grace on all the people who are less fortunate than me. And because of this, I do not really look for any other seva opportunities to take part in. Suddenly, for reasons beyond my understanding, everything suddenly stopped. I was no longer able to wake up in the morning to meditate, and the case numbers in Toronto were rising at such a dangerous level, it was not safe to go out anymore. Luckily for me, at that point, Sister Shelley Gupta reached out to me about the Sai Global Mission. I will forever be grateful to Swami for introducing me to the leads of Sai Global Mission, because by working with them, I have been able to see how there is scope for seva in every profession. By looking at their dedication and humility to work, I've been able to see how they can reach near perfection in everything they do and be of use to others. Being a volunteer for Sai Global Mission, the first project that we had was revamping the website. Personally, for me, the beauty of Sai Global Mission is that we have the opportunity to inspire others about Swami's teachings and help them get on the path of self-transformation without using Swami's name and form. Obviously, for me, it was very difficult to do this because I'd always attached Swami's name and form to his mission. During one of Swami's Paravidya sessions, Swami said that we always say, Swami is God. But the correct statement is that God is Swami, and we should detach from the name and the form and just derive the inspiration to do more and more seva every single day. For the longest time, I could not accept this because in my limited understanding, if somebody detached from his name and form, they would become non-believers. However, by attempting to at least start to focus just on his teachings and not his name and form, I realized that we naturally become more inclusive and we are in a much more better position to see the goodness in others. Therefore, a changed mindset within us helps us see the world very differently. I'm far away from this detachment, but I do hope that one fine day I will be there. There were many other projects that came my way as part of working for Sai Global Mission, such as E1E1 and the Sarla Memorial website for the US donors. During this process, I worked with many US adults and youth, and I was able to see how somebody can use their acquired skills and knowledge to be of use to others. The lesson I learned was no matter what I do in life, I should always give it my 100%, with Swami as the focus, and he makes all the magic happen. Dear brothers and sisters, as youth, we are gifted with this ability to learn everything very quickly and retain it for a very long time. This makes us capable. In parallel, we should learn to say yes to any and every opportunity that comes our way in any form, without worrying about how is this going to help somebody else or how is this going to benefit me. By making ourselves available and capable, Swami then takes over and makes everything happen. In conclusion, even though the pandemic has claimed millions of lives all over the globe, it is actually a blessing in disguise because it has enabled us or forced us to take some crucial alone time and introspect on ourselves and find out where we are lacking so we can improve on ourselves and ultimately realize that we're all divine beings. Jai Sai Ram.
Thank you, Sister Sujaya. She said it was a blessing in disguise. Probably the pandemic was a divine pandemic, who knows, so that we all go within and understand our true divinity. She made a very good point of when Swami said, God is Swami, don't say Swami is God, say God is Swami. We got to detach from the form. I still remember once when I asked Swami, Swami, you say detach from the form. I understand about people, but yours is a divine form. And if I get attached to your divine form, Swami, isn't it right that I get attached to your sweet divine form? And Swami said, the Gopikas had a kind of asakti bhakti. They were attached to the form. But Radha had the virakti bhakti. And she transcended the form. She found her Krishna as her antaranga, Krishna, and as her antaryami. And that is what I want all of you to achieve. And thank you once more, Sister Sujaya Bhatt. And now we have Dr. Manoj Bharadwaj. Dr. Manoj Bharadwaj was born in Toronto, Canada. He's a medical doctor by profession and is certified in internal and family medicine, combining his allopathic training with mind-body medicine. Indeed, he's also completed his hypnotherapy course with Eka Clinical Hypnotherapy Institution. He has participated in numerous medical camps and disaster relief efforts around the world, and he continues to make time for seva activities whenever he can. And Brother Manoj has recently submitted the draft of his book to Swami, Fire and Water, My Journey from Chaos to Compassion. Let's listen to Brother Dr. Manoj Bharadwaj from Toronto. Brother Manoj.
Hello? We're okay? Hot crowd, hot crowd. All right. So, Sairam, dear gods and goddesses, thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak amongst you again. I just wanted to start off by offering my deepest love and gratitude to my dear Swami, the indweller of my heart. I just wanted to take these few minutes just to share some of the insights that have bubbled up for me during the course of this pandemic. And just keep in mind, as I'm sharing it with you, it's just serving as a reminder to myself of what I need to do along my path. So this pandemic, no doubt, has brought the entire world to its knees, whether it was health scares, job losses, isolation, losing a loved one. Almost everyone was forced into submission by powers that were beyond their control. And the media, no doubt, had a feeding frenzy with all the fear-mongering. And depending on where you were, who you were surrounded by, you were either drowning in fear or riding on the wings of love and hope. And every morning, we all had to make this choice. Do I choose fear and despair, or do I choose love and hope? And for the most part, it felt like fear and despair had the upper hand, and love and hope was like an uphill battle. On top of that, everyone had their own ways of expressing their fears. And we looked down upon how others are reacting or not reacting in a given situation. But the need of the hour dear brothers and sisters, was to allow each other some space and some grace, because we were all just trying to do the best that we could with the information that we had, the beliefs that we held. Regardless of where we were in the world, almost all of us was invited to do a lot of soul searching. People who were miserable at work suddenly realized that they were also miserable at home in all the chaos. And they had to ask themselves this question: if I'm miserable at work and at home, then perhaps it's not my environment, but perhaps it's something inside me that's causing all this misery. And it's no accident that Swami also invited us to look within ourselves with the Master of the Mind series and the Kathopanishads, so that we can connect more with our true self, our state of being. And from there, we can walk out into the world as the eye of the storm. There's this teacher of Advaita who I admire, Rupert Spira, who beautifully said that the essence of all the scriptures and religions basically came down to this simple statement: that beingness is happiness, and happiness is shared. Beingness is happiness, and happiness is shared. Brothers and sisters, we are all being, awareness, and bliss, pure consciousness. We all know this intellectually, at least. And we're all trying to make sincere steps towards understanding this truth. But like me, I'm sure a lot of you are facing a lot of resistance along this path. And most of this resistance, if not all of it, is coming from that separate self, that little I. This little separate self is essentially fighting for its existence. It will fight, it will bite, it will take us down some dark, scary roads before it throws in that towel. Its very existence is at stake. Thoughts may arise like, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I have all these jealous thoughts, selfish thoughts. And let's not forget the mountains of guilt that I have to chip away at before I can even be considered worthy of God's grace. All of these negative thoughts, including shame, guilt, judgments, they're all coming from, they're not our true essence. They're coming from that separate self. And again, these thoughts are nothing but byproducts of our upbringing from childhood, from society, education, religion, and they're not our fault. And we have to start looking at it like that. We have to start talking to ourselves as if we're talking to a child, with love and tenderness. Any thoughts not arising from that place of love is essentially coming from that separate self, that little I. And the most important thing that I wanted to share with all of you, to everyone here, everyone who's watching, anyone who's listening, is that we are and always will be worthy of God's grace. Not yesterday, not tomorrow, not 10 years from now, but right here, right now, as we are, the entire package. Many people would say that self-realization is our birthright, which is true. But I would just suggest that we all take a step back and try to embrace the fact that worthiness is our birthright. We should put it on our side table, in our wallets, in our purses, tattoo it on our foreheads, that worthiness is our birthright. Once we understand this concept, at least in my personal experience, we can take that journey within with a little less baggage, a little less resistance, we can travel light. I wanted to share a dream analogy that Rupert Spire uses a lot, and it helped me understand this going within and going without process, and I'm hoping it'll help you. So it goes like this. Let's just say there's a person named Mary. Mary is living in Los Angeles, and she's having a dream. She's asleep. She's having this dream that she's this character named Jane, living in London. Jane is married, she has children, she has all sorts of friends, she has a job, there's buildings, all sorts of sights and sounds. It's a fully immersive experience. At some point along the way, Jane gets this little nudging from within that something's amiss. Something feels not right, that it's illusory, it's temporary, whatever she's experiencing, and then begins her path of self-inquiry to find out who she really is. And as she goes within, as she tries to find out who is this character Jane, she'll eventually realize that she's actually Mary fast asleep having this dream. The second way for Jane to wake up is the outward path, where she has to come to this realization that everyone and everything in her dream, all the people, all the sights, all the sounds, is essentially her. This I would equate with the outward path, or the path of surrender, or love all, serve all, selfless service. And both these paths, the inward path, the path of self-inquiry, and the outward path, the path of surrender, have to go hand in hand. Aham Brahma, Sarvam Brahma. And again, as we go within, those pesky thoughts will continue to arise, probably even louder than before. And as they arise, just meet them lovingly with inquiry. Just ask yourself this question: on whose behalf do those thoughts arise? Who is that one that's feeling this fear, despair, depression? And again, as we ask this question and slowly go within, we'll start to realize that there's nobody home. That it was this illusory false self that was causing all this torture. And as a physician, I try to play this game myself. I look at all the sights and sounds. Okay, here's my retina. It's displaying this image in the back of my head. Then I said, okay, who is this little I? Who is this me? And is it my brain cells firing? What is it? And the closest maybe I could get to was maybe it's my thoughts, my collection of memories. But even that's not true. That's just, I can access those, but those are not me. So slowly, as we keep going within, and we step behind that little I, we start tapping into that awareness, that place of peace. We start becoming aware of being aware. We start becoming aware of being aware. And initially, some may experience that as pockets of peace or happiness. It may come in our meditations for a few moments, or as we're going throughout our day, whenever we have time to pause. And slowly, as we keep anchoring that peace, those moments will become longer and longer. And just how Swami mentions, eventually it'll become like a 24-hour walking meditation. There's a beautiful quote by a person named Ivan Amar, I believe, who said that happiness is peace in motion, and peace is happiness at rest. Happiness is peace in motion, and peace is happiness at rest. And I love that quote because, at the end of it all, I always try to, whether it's people going after material things or spiritual pursuits, what are we all really trying to achieve here? Aren't we all just trying to be happy? Even if we're doing bhajans or meditations or, all these sorts of spiritual quests, or that person who's looking to buy a car, have a big job, and have, sit on buttloads of money. Everyone is just trying to be happy. But why? Because it's the essence of our true self. See, when consciousness tried to contract itself, like just imagine like a little, elastic ball, its nature is to expand back into that true state of happiness. And this is the reason why we do what we do. So that's what waits for us within. So, brothers and sisters, I'm on this journey with you. And I just wanted to say in closing that be brave. Let's be brave and persevere. Let's be brave to let go of old concepts and beliefs that don't serve us or others anymore. You are all unique, and your path is unique, and it will come with ease and flow. Yes, we will fall many times, but let's just love ourselves unconditionally every time we fall and every time we get back up on our feet. Because there's no pass or fail in this journey, because we already are that. Jai Sai Ram.
Thank you, Brother Dr. Manoj Bharadwaj. And as he rightly mentioned, the thoughts, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I've done lots of sins, and all the guilt takes us away from the Lord. Once when I was singing Mera Jeevan Tere Havale, I said, "E papi ko apna lo." And Swami looked at me quizzically. Because most of us don't understand that guilt is something that takes us away from God, although we love to sing Anatha Bandho, Sai Prabho, Aparadha Kshama Karo, Sai Prabho, or Ek Baar Kshama Karo, Sai, Mere Baba, Sri Sathya Sai, because I'm a sinner. But Swami, in Prashanti Mandir, when Sri Padmanabha Shastri, the Purohit, was chanting the Vedas and said, Papoham, Papa Karmaham, Papatma, Papa Sambhava. Swami said, no. Stop it. Change it. Praptoham, Prapta Karmaham, Praptatma, Prapta Sambhava. Papi is sinner. Prapto means worthy, deserving. And the moment we realize we are deserving of God's grace, only then everything is possible. Brother also mentioned one more beautiful thing, the inward path of self-enquiry, or who am I, and the outward path of surrender. Aham Brahmasmi, Sarvam Brahma, Aham Brahma, Sarvam Brahma should go hand in hand. So I think literally the pandemic has pushed us because we were all running. We were all doing. It gave us a pause, a sacred pause to move from doing to being. Thank you, Dr. Manoj Bharadwaj. And we have now the last speaker for this morning, Dr. Rakshmi Tapa. She hails from Nepal, and lives and works in the USA. She currently works as a cardiologist in the state of Kansas and volunteers in various youth activities. She also volunteers for the One World, One Sai online platform, Sai Ashraya initiative, to help the homeless children and the Nepali Uvacha team. So Sister Rakshmi Tapa from Kansas.
Om Shri Sai Ram. I offer my humble pranams at the lotus feet of my dearest Lord, and I thank everyone for the opportunity to speak in front of all of you. I know a lot of elite speakers must have spoken before me, and without having the advantage of looking at you all directly, I hope and pray that the energy of Swami flows through me, and I hope and pray that he's going to speak through me. First of all, I really miss being there. Having said that, we are at a phase where we have to understand ourselves as more than our bodies and more of as a universal consciousness. So in a way, I thank Swami for this opportunity to understand myself in that way. So the topic given, I think, is pandemic within and without. When I think of it now, after the pandemic, I would like to start by saying what is within and what is without. So if we sit back and think of what is the boundary of within and without, most of us will think that, okay, our own boundary is the skin, and outside of the skin is outside, and from the skin and insidewards is myself. Well, that is just the boundary of the bodies that we have. The real within is the one that is the consciousness that is observing everything that's going on, starting right from the mind itself. So the universe does not start outside of you. It really starts from where the mind starts. And this understanding has come to me only after listening to so many discourses that Swami has given and analyzing it one step further. So from that aspect, if we say, has there been any change in myself or anyone else, the constant answer should be no, because we are constant, one consciousness that's constantly observing this movie that's called life or universe, whether it may have pandemic, tomorrow it may have some joy in it, again tomorrow there may be another kind of sorrow in it. So this perspective of sorrow and happiness also we should analyze one more step. Because if you think of it, there is a certain degree of expectation we have from life and from universe, and if it does not go according to that expectation, then that becomes sorrow for us. I will give you a simple example. Even before the pandemic, there were many people who were dying of hunger, many people who were dying in the hospitals every day. Maybe there were neighbors around us, and that never gave us as much sorrow as this pandemic gave. First of all, I think because the news media and everybody else also helped us learn about the news more. But secondly, also, and more importantly, it became a sorrow for everyone because it became a real possibility that we ourselves, our bodies and our own families could be, affected by this pandemic or could be affected by this virus. And so that possibility, that attachment to the body and the self and to our families and to what was a booming economy for all of us, attachment to that fact is the real cause of the sorrow of the pandemic. For someone who was always identifying himself or herself as a consciousness only and kind of accepting everything that comes in life as a gift of God and surrendering everything to God, for that kind of person probably this pandemic would have not much sorrow as most of us who are kind of bound in our day-to-day lives and we expect the life to go in a certain way. So the problem is not really with pandemic or any other disaster, but the problem is with how we perceive our lives and how attached we are to it. And in fact, these disasters or these pandemics are good in a way because it brings out the weaknesses inside of us. It did that for me also. You would think that you would not be so scared, you have Swami with you, you will not be afraid, and when you have to go out there and work with patients or work with people who are actually having diseases, then then the fear comes out. The attachment to something is not revealed until something happens to that particular person or thing that you are attached to. And this is what I have learned from this pandemic. And these are very thankful results of pandemic that, it has brought out the fear that was in me, brought out the attachments, and now I'm more aware of it. It's like a torchlight that shines in a dark room, and now it's up to me whether I want to clean out that dirt or not. So if you look at it from that perspective, what is the real pandemic? This virus is not the real pandemic. The real pandemic that has been going on for ages and ages is the pandemic of ego and attachment. Life after life, we have been identifying ourselves as that particular body, wanting sense pleasures, wanting happiness for our families. Maybe one step further, we also want happiness for the societies we live in. But that is also somewhat limited, I would say, because if we had the real knowledge of who we were, we would be beyond any kind of sorrow and beyond any kind of happiness. We would be in bliss, which is our real nature. So if we learn to look at ourselves in that way, I think we will learn more, and that will be the true benefit of going through a universal or a global disaster like pandemic. So in a way, we thank Swami, we thank the universe and God for making us going through this, because it's only making us better. And what can we say about Swami? Because he had warned us, in fact, even 2-3 years ago, that there are going to be a lot of earth changes that are going to happen before the golden age comes. So actually, once this pandemic started, personally, in some corner of my heart, I was happy that these changes had started, and I sort of learned to accept it in that way. And from that, I learned this virtue of acceptance, virtue of surrender. The other thing I would say I changed after the pandemic more is, this lack of not being able to travel, not being able to do as much service, let's say, as we used to, perhaps by traveling and meeting other youths or meeting other homeless people or going to the shelters for food was, I really started questioning what really is service. And this is a problem I saw with myself, and perhaps a lot of other youths as well, if they can learn this from me, is that doing service in terms of volume is never a problem with youth. They have a lot of energy, they can feed a lot of people, they can go and help many people. And a lot of times it becomes so busy for us, or for whatever reason, we are all only concerned about the number of times we do service, the number of people we fed, things like that. And somewhere there, providing love, when we provide service, is completely forgotten. Service becomes number. Service does not become providing love, service, and help to other people. I'm very sure there must be youths who are also providing love and service, but I was a weak one. I used to forget doing that a lot of times. So with not being able to serve, and just doing my day-to-day work, going to office, kind of made my life feel a little bit empty at times. But then as I read more of Swami's discourses and guidances, I kind of learned that it's not about going and finding helpless people and loving them. Whatever comes in front of you in that particular day, that is also coming by God's grace only. That is also coming by Brahman's grace only. And that is the particular chapter that you have to learn in your day-to-day life that will make you a better person. Because I firmly believe, we should all firmly believe that whatever happens to us every day, whatever comes your way, whatever food comes in your plate, or whatever money that comes to your account, everything comes there because of Swami's wish or Brahman's wish. So if I'm meeting all these people in my office every day, that must be a wish of Swami or Brahman, and there must be a chapter there for me to get better at what I am doing. So I started loving everybody I met, whether it was a simple receptionist at my work, whether it was a patient I was supposed to treat, or anybody else. And I realized that once you give love, it is addictive, because they also love you back. The way you react to universe, the universe also reacts back to you. And giving love alone is the real service. In whatever way you may do, the action may be different, but giving love is the main thing I learned through this pandemic. just by doing my day-to-day duty, actually meeting my own family members or going to work. And so this has just brought a new chapter in my life, I should say, that just peacefully, quietly doing what you need to do, if you do it with a lot of love, having the firm conviction that whatever is coming in front of you is the swadharma or the job that God has given to you that day, that will certainly bring a lot of happiness to you and perhaps help us go towards our goal also. Having said that, I would like to end my short talk over here and again submit myself to the lotus feet of Swami. Thank you. Jai Sai Ram.
Thank you, Dr. Rakshmi Tapa. And what a lovely message. Loving everyone we come across in our day-to-day life during our regular duties is the true seva. That's why our Lord has said, duty without love is deplorable. Duty with love is desirable. Love without duty is divine. And one more beautiful point that sister made was the real pandemic is the pandemic of ego and attachment. And ego and attachment is the one that comes because of the mind. So I read somewhere, somebody was talking, peace of mind, I want peace of mind. But the choice is peace or mind. You can't have peace of mind. It's only peace or mind. So as we listen to these lessons learned, it shows that we have to start moving towards inner transformation and stop looking at changing others, be it our family, be it our friends, or the society. We need to look within and transform ourselves. Basavanna said, Lokada donkannu neeveke tidduviri. Nimma donkannu tiddikolli Swami. Why are you bothered about straightening the crookedness of the world? Look into your inner crookedness and straighten it. What has the pandemic done to us? It is moving us more within. To understand, we need to go beyond form. We need to go beyond name. And finally realize, as Kabir Das said, Tera sai tujhme, jaise puhpan mein baas. Tera sai tujhme, jaise puhpan mein baas. Your sai, your divinity is within you, just like the fragrance inside the flower. Kasturi ka mrug jo fir dhoonde ghas. We are all like the musk deer who's going after the smell, thinking it's somewhere outside, whereas all the joy, all the peace, all the divinity is only inside. With this last talk, as we await Sadguru's arrival, we'll have a 10 minutes break, and after that we'll be continuing with bhajan till the arrival of Sadguru, Sri Madhusudan Sai, for the Prashnottara Vahini, for the series of question and answers, which all of us are awaiting. Thank you very much, and let's have a wonderful morning waiting for Sri Madhusudan Sai. Jai Sai Ram.